Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are in the country. People are joining the webinar. I'm going to wait for a couple of minutes until the people have had a chance to join. For those of you who are on time, appreciate it very much. Happy to have you with us to have this important conversation about how to do economic development in the wake of the pandemic that is equitable and supports small business. I'll give it about one more minute and then we'll start. All right, let's go. So this topic, engaging residents and small businesses in equitable economic development, is one that is near and dear to my heart and has attracted a lot of attention in the pandemic and the economic turmoil that has happened afterward and the crises that have hit small businesses. This tool, the Colu app, is a really interesting and potentially powerful way to support equitable economic development. And to talk about how they are using it in their communities, we have three good speakers from totally different perspectives, which is something that we really wanted to do. We have Mayor Tito Brown from Youngstown, who will talk about it as an elected official trying to lead his community. We have Natalia Urtubey, who is the Director of Small Business for Boston, who is looking at it as someone whose job it is to support small business as a city employee. And then we have Diane Rogers, CEO and President of Rancho Cordova Chamber of Commerce. And she's looking at it from the lens of a business person. Each of these folks is going to talk for about 8 to 10 minutes about their experience. And then Michael Mazer for Colu is going to react a little bit to their presentation. And throughout the conversation, I want you to use the chat function to put in your questions and comments. And then after the presentations, we'll go back and we'll have people respond to those questions. And again, thank you for being here with us and sharing an hour of your time. And thank you to the speakers and to Colu for providing this important information. And Mayor Brown, I'll let you kick it off. Talk about what you're doing in Youngstown.
Mark, first of all, thank you so much for allowing me just to stop by briefly and have a conversation with those who are on the program here. I really want to talk a little bit about the city of Youngstown and give you a brief history of who we are and kind of let you know where we are as it relates through the COVID pandemic and how we weathered that storm, but also how Colu was a very big piece for us. You know, in 2027, the city of Youngstown will mark 50 years since the closure of our steel mills. As a legacy city, we have faced a history of corruption, political corruption, corporate corruption. Government mistrust was a big thing when I took office. Our administration has had to overcome many obstacles. Inadequate education and a lack of livable wage jobs have always been a problem for this community. As a further hindrance, our efforts to recover in this decline of our housing stock, transportation, and those who need access to employment. The global pandemic has hit our town harder than most, with COVID-19 being a great revealer of our health, social, and economic and racial disparities of our community. But small to medium-sized business are also feeling the impact of the pandemic, especially minority business, which many of had not established a banking relationship with the institution. In response to COVID-19, our economic team, led by EAG, our Economic Action Group, conducted extensive outreach and engaged the Youngstown business on COVID-19 relief programs, which we included since March of 2020. We did the Paycheck Protection Program round 1 and 2, economic injury disaster loan, restaurant revitalization fund, state of Ohio business grant, fall 2020 and summer of 2021, Mahoney County Small Business Relief Fund, and the City of Youngstown COVID-19 Business Stabilization Grant. The initial outreach of EAG staff surveyed Youngstown business on their experience during the pandemic, their needs, and the employment data. We engaged businesses to invite them to downtown business meetings and restaurant focus group meetings. The outreach included calling, email, and mailing postcards. We contacted over 1,000 Youngstown businesses and made nearly 7,000 calls to the Youngstown business. Because of EAG's outreach efforts to our business, they received $54.9 million in PPP Round 1 funding, which was nearly 60% of the total funding received by Youngstown business. The needs of Youngstown are no different from other communities across the nation. When a city is barely rebounding from 50 years of economic decline because of outside forces beyond our control, those rebounds have been further eviscerated by COVID-19. The future of the economic growth of Youngstown and the Mahoney Valley, it depends largely on how we focus going forward. So what we did, we started with the service. We conducted outreach to local business in person, via phone, and managed that to find out who were eligible for the app. And this is where we started really getting into the technical piece. And as a mayor, I was very impressed on how we really looked at those businesses who could benefit from the app. We provided technical assistance to the business to familiarize them with the app, train them on POS, the point of sales system setup, and navigated them through the Yo app and system. And I can honestly tell you, when people saw the Yo app, that really resonated for them, and they wanted to know, what's the Yo app? What's the Yo app? So we coordinated with Colu and the staff through the app development, marketing, a soft launch, and early stages in a hard launch preparation. The soft launch really, it got our local media to really engage to figure out what are we doing it. And I liked it because it felt like a team and a community coming together after we're coming out of a pandemic to figure out, how do we continue to grow? How do we continue to get better? We facilitated the process, printing app collateral. We had weekly meetings for team follow-up, marketing, and business assistance hours. Delivering the collateral to the business and collect contact information and pictures for each business. So what we did with our EAG group and our economic development team, we started bringing the business together and started really letting them showcase and spotlight their business. Many people say, I didn't realize that business was in Youngstown, and that had we not put them, get them eligible to be a part of the app, they may have not survived through this pandemic. And we had some marketing interns manage the app on social media. That played a significant piece for the city of Youngstown, the social media, and really putting it out there. Kids talk in technology now, and the app really helped us. So many of the stories that we were able to gather, to put out in the community as how business or we're really surviving through this pandemic. But we engaged many of our local partners about the app, including their Youngstown State, JAC Management. JAC Management, they manage our amphitheater as well as our Cavelli Theater. So they're the entertainment world. So we use that to assist us in putting press releases and press conference together to coordinate the effort. Some of the outcomes I really wanted to share with you. We conducted outreach to 121 business, 8 current redeemers, and 4 businesses are in process. And we have 80 current earners. People like to hear about the earning points, and that's a big piece. 5 behind the counter stories and 10 event stories. So we've sustained a presence as it relates to this app. The future for us it's got to be focused on diversification and transitioning to industries. And we're learning that we can do business a little different. We can transition a lot different for us. For me as a mayor, we've got to look, we can't just say we can't wait for the theory of when the industry comes and opportunities here. We've really focused on the 21st century jobs, and we want to use this app to really put that into perspective. And when I say that, we want to make sure that individuals know that here are the places you can go and get a job, but you need to be job trained and you have to have job access. And if I could, a quick story, I want to tell you about two of our primary key partners, and I think it's going to help us as it relates to promoting the app and business. We talk about our additive manufacturing and advanced manufacturing, where we have America Makes, which is the nation's leading collaborative partner in additive manufacturing and 3D printing. And it's structured as a private-public partnership that focuses on increasing the nation's global competitiveness across all sectors. And I believe what we're trying to do is connect all the sectors in the market as it relates to what's going on, what businesses are happening in the city of Youngstown. And the second is our Youngstown State University Center for Innovation, which manufacturing is focused on the College of STEM and other academic divisions. Before I would stop and have the conversation end, I really want to let you know that the goal is to make sure the next generation of our students are trained and ready for manufacturing, what it will look like. The center they're exposing our children at an early age so that we can be competitive in those industries. And I know we're talking about equity and we're talking about economics and we're talking about how to use this as this app. And we've got to be ready for the next generation of those jobs. And this, the industry that's out there as it relates to how we connect the people. This is not my grandfather's manufacturing technology. This technology that we're using right now is a new way of doing business. It's not just the word of mouth anymore. So for us, we've got to take our role in leadership that we're in right now and take advantage of this legacy opportunity where we can transition of how we do business, how we conduct business, how we make sure that when we're promoting a business, or we're promoting an app, that we have the jobs ready, the people ready, and they have to have access to it. So I'll take this opportunity and just stop and yield the rest of my time to anyone else who's here to speak. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mayor. Natalia, you're up next. And I would like you to step back. The mayor talked about the app several times. Take a minute or so and just explain how it works as you talk about your experience in Boston.
Well, thank you first and foremost for having me. This is a really great opportunity to talk about very cool and digital engagement app that the city of Boston has created. So before I get into how the app works, which I'm happy to talk about, I want to just briefly talk a little bit about how we got to even getting an app in the first place, if that's okay. So obviously when the shutdown happened back in March of 2020, immediately our office was scrambling to figure out exactly how we best support businesses. One of the first things that we did off the bat was put together a survey that businesses could tell us exactly how they needed to be supported. Very quickly, we stood up relief funding, which was the #1 thing that businesses were asking for. And that relief funding turned into, within a year, us issuing more than $16 million in direct grants to small businesses, to over 4,500 small businesses. And this response was one that was deeply rooted in community engagement and making sure that the way in which the city was responding to this pandemic was reflective of the needs of our most vulnerable businesses, in particular those that are owned by women, Black, brown, and immigrant residents of the city of Boston. So very early on, our response was, what can we do, and what can we do really quickly? During that time, everybody, and I think this was a collective push from residents across the country, was how do I support local businesses, right? So how do I play a role in making sure that my favorite shops around the city stay open? And that really led to a lot of questions about City of Boston, do you have a list of businesses across the city that we can support? And while we've done neighborhood-based inventories of businesses, those, as anyone who's ever worked in government knows, that the second you put those out, they're out of date, right? A business has shut down, a business has moved, so it was very hard to keep up with this. And this is not something that the City of Boston regularly maintained. So this was one of the key things that we were thinking about. We're also thinking about how do residents and everyday people get involved in a more tangible way. And around that time is when we met Colu, and we started talking about what this would look like. What would a digital engagement app look like for the city of Boston to host and really engage with both residents and visitors, but more specifically to engage with our businesses. So quickly thereafter, we launched Be Local, which is our app, which works as a way to incentivize users, so incentivize shoppers to get them to shop locally. So every time somebody shops at one of our featured businesses, which are either seen as redeeming businesses or participating businesses, they automatically get a percentage back of their points of the total amount that they spend as points. Those points can then be redeemed as cash to pay for items at those same businesses. So the way it works is really as a reward program, incentivizing people to choose very specifically where they're shopping local. We used it as a way of gaining more customers for our businesses. But I think most importantly, we used it as a way for residents and visitors to engage with Boston in a different way, right? So we wanted people during the pandemic, and they couldn't travel, to use that opportunity to explore Boston. Go to that neighborhood you've never been to. Go visit that Black-owned bookstore that, you know, as you're shopping for, back to school shopping or something like that. So we really wanted people to use this as a tool to get to know their city better, and specifically to get rewarded for shopping locally. Very early on, we created reward points. So any local business in Boston would give you 10% back. We also wanted to make sure that we were highlighting our immigrant, our minority owned, our women owned, and our Black owned businesses. Because obviously we know, and there's so much data out there to support this, our Black owned businesses, our minority owned businesses, and our women owned businesses were most disproportionately impacted during the pandemic. Partially, I think, because of capital and access to funding to keep businesses open. So we wanted to make sure that we were targeting those businesses and giving them extra visibility on this app and through this platform. Over the course of we launched April 15th of 2021. I hope I have those dates right, not that they're, but anyway, April 15th. And over the last couple months, we have really been pushing to get more users on the app, to make sure that our businesses are creating those stories, that our local community organizations and events are highlighted on the app, but that you're really getting to know those behind the counter stories. You're getting to know those businesses on our app. We have over 2,500 businesses on the app. We have almost 11,000 users, and we have, I think it's over 35% conversion rate, which is, as I've learned, because I'm not a techie by any means, that is a very good conversion rate. But there have also been a lot of challenges, as we think about what this means for users, connecting their bank account. And as Mayor Brown mentioned, there's a lack of trust in government. And so the more that we could do to bring transparency to this app and what people were getting out of it, I think continues to build that trust that any government is looking to build with its residents. The app, I think, has been incredibly successful. We've had a really robust use in this last month. We did do a promo code that would get businesses 3 times the points redeemed. So we did obviously see a spike. That has been one of the biggest learnings for us, is that as you engage these businesses into participating in something like this, the incentives do have to be greater. Before, we were giving a lot of incentives to users to try to really capture new folks on the app. And then, in this fall, we really pivoted to incentivizing more engagement from the businesses. And so in the month of October alone, we've given out almost $100,000 Is that right? I mean, maybe I have those numbers wrong. Yeah, over $100,000 in October alone, which is a huge increase from our previous months. If we were to compare them, it'd be, about $25,000 in rewards directly back to businesses in September, and around $35,000 or $38,000 in October. But then when you multiply that by 3, you really see those numbers take off. And so that goes to show how important it is to have businesses engaged in this process, in this digital engagement tool, because if they're not involved and they're not the ones getting their customers to sign up and their customers to use their points, it really does create a lagging effect in being able to execute. Overall, this app, I think, has taken off in a way that I think is really representative of Boston's strong small business community. We have been really proud to have a tool like this that allows our residents to really play a vital role in that recovery. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalia. So Natalia and Mayor Brown both talked about trust in government. That's a central issue for why you're here, right, Diane? So tell your story.
Well, thank you. And thank you for having this opportunity to speak to all of you. I'm Diane Rogers and have the privilege of serving as the president and CEO of the Rancho Cordova Area Chamber of Commerce. And by way of a little background, we are actually between Sacramento and Lake Tahoe. This probably Rancho Cordova may not be quite on everybody's map, but we sort of lay between that area. And we are a bedroom community of about 75,000. The chamber itself serves about 125,000 residents, and we have about 450 members, and we have about 15,000 employees within within those members. I was listening to the mayor, listening that your city is wonderful and been around a while. Rancho Cordova itself was only incorporated in 2003. The chamber has been around for 60 years. So our dynamic and the opportunity to be engaged in cityhood and building and developing the community has been pretty extraordinary. Rancho Cordova as a community has no debt. We have no retirement debt. We've never been in the red. And in the last, since 2014, we've successfully passed 2 half-cent sales tax. One is dedicated to what we call community enhancement funds, which is funds that go directly to businesses and nonprofit organizations and other types of entities to literally enhance the community. They've bought things like football helmets for the football team and pianos for the schools and different things like that. Just this past year, we passed a second half-cent sales tax right in the middle of the pandemic. So from a business side, I was honestly surprised that we were able to do that, but it happened. And those funds are dedicated to infrastructure and business retention. And so the chamber has been given the privilege of being able to be engaged in the business retention portion of it. A little bit about our history of the community. We're based around a Air Force Base and Aerojet Rocketdyne, which closed in 1993. And as I mentioned, cityhood took a little while because there was a lot of interest in the early 70s. But if any of you are aware of California politics, which we seem to get in the news more than our fair share, we had Proposition 13. So, and that was very difficult. I see nods from my colleagues realizing that that's out there. The other thing about the city is they're really good at contracting out services. We're a community where we contract out for our police department, our parks, our trash, different things like that. So we do have a relationship with the city that is has already had the history of being able to work with different entities. The community, I wanted to address the makeup of the community because I know a lot of our conversation is around equity and making the opportunities available. And I'll talk about the app and the impact, but I wanted to set the stage that 18% of our community are immigrant population. We had a very large inflow from Indochina in the late 70s and early 80s. In the 90s, we had the former Soviet Union refugees. We had quite a large population come into our community there, Russian, Ukrainian, Armenian, that sort of thing. And 2000, 2007, we had a large influx of Hispanic population into our community. The stats I do have that 20% of our immigration population are entrepreneurs. They are local business people. And so we wanted to keep that in mind when we started looking at our options. A fair-sized Indian population, and I'm really pleased to say that we just elected our first woman of color to our city council. And then our mayor is currently an African-American gentleman. And I'm also proud of the fact that that gentleman was on the Chamber's board of directors and an ambassador. And sadly, when we had a loss at our city council, he was able to get there were 21 candidates and he was appointed. And he has been an enormous voice for business ever since that point, and for the chamber. But his platform has been, how can we support and all of our businesses in our community. Fast forward to the pandemic, as my colleagues mentioned, we did a lot of shop local promotion. We did a dedicated directory to those businesses that were open. We did a restaurant directory, a dedicated restaurant directory of who was open and who had outside dining, that sort of thing. We also did some grants. We did a dedicated website with programs and tools. We did a lot of PPP outreach. And as the mayor mentioned, many of our businesses had the same issue. We thought that they had the information, but when they went to their banks, we recognized that the data and information that people collect, such as their taxes and employment records and things like that, weren't really there. So that ended up handicapping us quite a bit. We also participated in a Mask Up campaign that was specifically dedicated to reaching out to our ethnic business owners, our veteran. We have a very large veteran population, women-owned businesses and disabled-owned businesses. We printed our materials in Russian, Spanish, and Dari. And Dari is an Afghani dialect. And we worked directly with the city. And I should qualify that we have an excellent relationship with our city. And it's been very productive. So when we started looking at the app as an option to support local business, we recognized that this was going to be a partnership. In addressing the app, and I'm sure if anyone on this call is either in the chamber business or an association or PBID type business, we get hundreds of pitches for all kinds of what I'll call silver bullets, and they are going to do everything we could ever wanted. Get rid of our debt. They're going to make businesses successful. They're also going to cure hair loss and weight loss. They're going to do everything you can all at one time. And 99% of those just go straight out the door. And I've been able to develop sort of a formula of things that I'm actually willing to look at. And a member of our city council actually brought the Colu app to our attention. And I'm sure my colleagues from Colu will agree, will recognize this. We put them through the ringer. We asked every question. We did a lot of research. We just really, like I said, put them through the ringer. And it took a little bit of time to get it up and running, but now I'm really pleased to say that we are very, very pleased with the app and how it's functioning. First and foremost, the most important criteria to me was the impact that this app would have on businesses. As I'm sure many of you know, our local businesses, particularly restaurants, retail shops, they are the first ones that are asked to donate, to give product, to sponsor, to give up or do deals, do those kinds of things. And that has such a challenging impact on our businesses because in many cases, as many of you probably know, restaurants, their margins are 2 to 3%. And it is so important to not burden them with one more thing, one more coupon program, one more, buy one, get one. And this app, the difference to me was there was nothing that the businesses themselves had to do except agree to participate. So we wanted to make sure that the businesses, again, they weren't asked to do coupons. They weren't asked to do a discount. They didn't have to, and for any of you who's been in that area, keeping track of that stuff is a nightmare. So that was when I agreed to participate in it because I knew and recognized the value it could serve to our businesses. But I wanted to make sure that it didn't have a negative impact. So for full transparency, the city itself contracted with Colu to be able to present the app, but they also contracted with the chamber, and we're doing the marketing and the marketing of the app to the business community. And as Mark alluded to, I mentioned in the number of immigrants in our community, there is a significant distrust of government. And as soon as we the government comes out and says that we're going to do this for you, there's an automatic layer of distrust. So by involving the chamber, we were able to add that layer of credibility because our lens is very dedicated to business. And so at this point in time, the way our relationship with the city is, they are paying for the marketing and the redeeming, the dollars that are redeemed through the app. And the chamber has a staff member dedicated to getting folks on the app, marketing it to users and to businesses. We've also had a gentleman who speaks Spanish go along with when we've been out in the field talking to different folks. So we did receive, I saw someone had a question on the chat. We did receive funding to do that. But I just wanted, that there is a significant distinction between what the city's doing and what the chamber's doing. I should also note, as a Chamber of Commerce, it's our responsibility to support our members, as you might imagine. And the agreement that we had is that we would advocate and do outreach to the entire business community, with the caveat that we were able to identify and promote our own chamber members. So when we have them on the app, it'll say whatever the business is, but also if they're a chamber member, there'll be an icon or something that identifies them as a chamber member. Let's see here, make sure I've got all my notes here for y'all. We do, like I mentioned, we have a staff member that's dedicated to it, and we have a lot of collateral. And just this morning, we had a meeting where we're going to convert some of our collateral into Spanish. And as I mentioned, we have a very large Russian population in our community, and we're going to be preparing some of our information in Russian as well. So the end result for us right now is we have about 500 users, about 105 businesses on the app, 20 of which are redeemers. The other thing I should mention, Rancho does not have a city center. I know I love Boston. You have all the different neighborhoods and things that people can visit and be a part of, but our community has no downtown, no city center. So advocating for our business community is a bit of a challenge. We have to do it very selectively. And it's been a lot of work, but I think it's turned out to be pretty good for us. About 30% of our businesses on the app are restaurants and bakeries. We have a lot of fitness businesses in our area, so they're on the app, and some personal services. So again, the value, I think, of having a partnership with the city is to add credibility to the community that doesn't have a great deal of trust in government, but also it gives us the lens of being active on behalf of the business community, being that voice. City has done a great job of increasing the number of participants on the app, and it's been our responsibility to get the businesses themselves on. And I think that that's worked pretty effectively. So happy to answer any questions about the community and where we go from here. So thanks.
Thank you very much, Diane. Michael, we're about out of time, but why don't you take a few minutes? Well, no, we're not. I'm misreading the clock. Go ahead and take a few minutes and react to what the speakers have said.
Yes, thank you. And thank you all for speaking, and thank you everyone for joining. Just kind of to quickly bring some points, just to introduce myself, I'm the Vice President of Business Development and Operations at Colu. You know, when the pandemic started, one of the biggest things that we saw is that cities really were looking for ways to create a behavioral change and to get impact quickly. You know, small businesses were hurt and challenged, and, you know, I think nobody really knew what was going on. So when we started, we really just wanted to see how we can use a city coin in cities in a way that will get people to shop local, meaning that was the main focus point. Using incentives to reward that type of behavior. One of the biggest challenges is always implementation. You know, people talk about technology, like Dan mentioned, as a silver bullet, but it's not. And, you know, we realized very fast that by bringing a software platform to cities, you know, each city gets their own app that's white labeled. It's not enough just to give an app to a city. It's about how do you adapt it to meet the unique needs of each local jurisdiction. So for example, Youngstown is totally different than Boston and totally different than Rancho Cordova, but what are the common denominators, right? So one common denominator we see is focusing on local businesses and focusing on equity. And the element of awareness is what we see is probably the most significant, meaning how do we get people to have that emotional connection with local business owners in their cities? As so when they have that 1 millisecond decision, am I going to go to a chain to get my coffee, or am I going to go to local business? They'll remember that they have a local business owner. So a big part in kind of to follow through all of the words that I heard from the best speakers is that how do we give business owners that are local a stage? And I think in the past few months we've seen that especially when it comes to cities that are using CARES Act funds or ARPA funds and things of that sort, it's also very, very critical to look at data and to understand, what's the correlation between rewarding residents or could be visitors, whomever is in the city, and the action that it drives. So how much percent back for purchase will generate consumption, and also being able to understand, how are these incentives helping promote minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses in cities? So a lot of the work is looking at the data and then quickly saying, okay, maybe we need promo codes like we're doing in Boston, which are very helpful to get people to start. That trust, sometimes in order to get people to trust something, you give them sort of a promo code. And then we see that in Boston, about 35% of people who use the promo code ended up linking their card, which is amazing, right? Because we learn and we see that these numbers grow and there is a network effect that gets created. And so I know we have wonderful numbers that kind of showcase diversity, but ultimately it's about agility and being able to look at the unique needs that each city has and what they want to focus on. So it could be 1 month for focusing on women-owned business, another month for highlighting minority-owned businesses. And that's, I think, the secret sauce. So yeah, again, very exciting to hear. I know I'm actually in Rancho Cordova right now, very close to where Diane is. We're kind of touring around a lot of our California cities. So it's awesome to meet the business owners too. I think ultimately by speaking to them, we hear that they are so excited about it. Just going there and meeting them and having someone from the city or from the chamber come out and interact with the businesses, that sometimes goes such a long way. So that's a big part of it, having like ambassadors go out there. So that's what we're learning, and it's been great. So thank you all.
Thank you very much, Michael. Some of the questions that have come in, and Natalia is right on top of this stuff, answering in the chat. Thank you. I want to turn one of them to Mayor Brown. One of the questions is, is there involvement with a destination marketing kind of organization or a tourism promotion organization? Do you have something like that in Youngstown that you're working with? Take yourself off mute.
I thought I did. I'm sitting there looking this off, but we have a county tourism in Mahoney County, which is the cities that located in there. One of the things I believe we probably need to do a lot better is making those connections for us. But we really focus on city business. So I'm a little selfish when it comes to this app. It's really geared toward the city and how to promote our business.
All right. I want to ask you also, so you went first and you've heard 3 other speakers. What are your thoughts or reactions to anything they said? What's the same or different for you there in Youngstown?
I think Michael said it best when he said we're a little unique. Our center, I think Cordova they don't have a downtown. In Boston, I know they have all downtown. I've been to Boston. I mean, is it Quincy Square? Is it Quincy? Was it Quincy somewhere? I went there for something. It's a Market Square. But our downtown is really one of our focal points of where our business are. But I think this really helped us for individuals realize that it was not, we had more than just our business downtown. That's what you can see more because they're collectively together in one spot. And I think this app really created, I didn't realize that was there. If you start looking for different pieces, that really opened my eye to say, wow, if I'm looking as the mayor, there are small business owners that if you don't get into that industry and that culture, you don't know they're there, and they've been there for hundreds of years. I think my first year here as mayor, an individual came and said, you know, we sell car wash products across the nation, but we've never sold any to the city of Youngstown. And it just blew my mind. And there, I could probably see them from my office if I got on the city hall's roof. And that to me said, there's a disconnect. So this business needs to be connected to everyone, but they're connected nationally, but they're not collected locally. So this really connects the local connection for me.
So Natalia responded to this question in the chat, and it's, what is the pricing structure and implementation maintenance costs? Natalia pointed out that that they used, Boston used CARES Act and ARPA funds, and most of that was for points. How have you, Diane, and then you, Mayor Brown, how have you funded the program, or how is it funded?
Ours is in part, we've used the funds that you mentioned, but that half-cent sales tax that we implemented has also been a source of funds for that. And so that's been very successful, and that's ongoing. It has no sunset at this particular point. So I think that as we move forward and continue to use the app, we'll be able to continue to maintain that support at the business community. And the mayor mentioned, you were asking about our DMOs. We actually share office space with our local Visit Rancho Cordova, and I sit on their board of directors and they sit on mine. So our relationship is a very strong one. And we've been able to do things like put information in the hotels, because we have quite a few extended stay hotels. So we do outreach to the business, the visitors, as well as the residents here too. So we've been able to leverage that for us.
And Mayor Brown, how'd you do it?
It's a combination. I know we started off with our COVID-19, but I believe I just saw something come across my desk at the Board of Controls where our business development fund, we're using that as well. So it's a combination of how we're funding this. And I think as we continue to see, as more we can see growth and we can see potential, we're going to make sure this is a long-term process for us as we see growth and potential.
And while you're speaking, Mayor, I ask you the next question, which is, what has been the feedback from business owners? Do they think this is helping them, this use of the Colu app?
I think the one thing that was mentioned about the business owner not having to do anything, you know, if they're not having to go out and, you know, do the coupons. And I think if the ones I talked to, they seem to enjoy it. It's like something it's kind of almost a gravy for them. It's on top of what they're already doing. They don't have to stop doing what they're doing. We can do what we're doing to get the customers there, but this may be another audience that they've never had to engage with. So the feedbacks have been positive. I think it's more if they're not having to expend much energy, they're okay with it. But they're seeing the return. You know, whether the margin is smaller, but they see a small margin, or if they see a big margin, they're grateful for it.
All right. And Natalia, what has been the feedback from business owners in Boston?
Yeah, I think we've had great feedback from business owners. We have obviously some that are more active than others. And I think as we think about how you get this app to be successful in your city, it's really about having those champions on the ground. I think, you know, the way our kind of payment structure is, we issue kind of the redeemed points back as grants. So it allows us to have that flexibility to issue payment every 2 weeks or so to the businesses. And it's seamless, right? But I do think the kind of launch moment for businesses is really critical, getting them to understand the program, understand how it works, and then train their staff to be able to be reflective is probably the most difficult part about this app and about doing anything that has to do with technology and getting lots of people on board, because we've actually heard from some businesses that say they have too much turnover in their staff. So using an app like this makes it really difficult. And so for us, having that participating business option is really important for those, because users can still get points from shopping there, but don't necessarily have to, the business doesn't have to have the pressure of also being a redeeming business at that time. So Boston is, while we are a small, big town, a small town in a big city, we tend to, get a lot of engagement from a lot of different corners of the city. So that's been really cool, because we didn't focus on just downtown or, one neighborhood in particular. We have opened this up to everybody, which I think is a domino effect. The more businesses and the more, high notable businesses that join, the better off the program ends up being, because more people are willing to join it as well.
So Natalia, what sort of economic impact have you seen from this?
Yeah, so there are numbers out there. We're still, before we share anything publicly, we are looking at the kind of the bigger picture. I think it's challenging to know, because we didn't measure the economic impact in this way prior to the pandemic. So trying to take numbers that we have seen and converting them to direct economic impact, I think is really challenging. However, we have seen people and we have heard stories and, individual comments and feedback about how they only use the app now to shop, both for restaurants or for retail, et cetera. They are looking to the app for guidance. And so I think that is ultimately the biggest win, is that even if you're not shopping, even if you're not necessarily redeeming your points, you're still being driven to shift your behavior to support local small businesses, which I think is really powerful.
Mm-hmm. So Michael, we talked a little bit about the cost. What is the return on investment for cities that you're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good question. As Natalia had mentioned, the return can be measured in many ways. I mean, we always look at the economic activity that's generated by the app. So I can say in cities like Akron, Ohio, where the app has been up and running for the longest, over a year now, almost reaching a year and a half, we see close to $1 million of economic activity generated by the app. And again, a lot of times people ask this question, right? How do you know if the people are shopping at a local business because of the app, or would they have otherwise anyways shopped there? So there's no way to measure that, but we know also from speaking to so many businesses and so many users that a lot of times maybe they would have anyways gone there, but they go there more frequently. They spend more money there. It's almost like I give the analogy with airline points, right? I'll constantly subconsciously want to use that airline that I know. I want to constantly have that loyalty. So the loyalty programs that a lot of the big box retailers and the chains have, there's nothing similar to it with local businesses. So this sort of connects that and creates that, again, subconscious decision. So from an ROI perspective, obviously there is additional tax revenue that comes in by having people shop local. We see also from the economic activity perspective, we're able to look at the data as to exactly how each business segment is being impacted, and also each neighborhood is being impacted. So there's a lot of interesting things there. It's we look at it as an ROI at about a 7x multiplier on the city funds invested in terms of economic activity generated from the app. But there's so much more interesting data and insight that I'm sure we'll be able to share later on with other cities that are open to it.
Thank you, Michael. One of the questions that's come in is, for smaller cities, is there any benefit to banding together, in sort of a regional approach? Have you folks seen that at all at Colu?
So, I mean, the main way that we've been addressing this is working with counties. A lot of time the county as the presiding jurisdiction can help and support, especially when it comes to smaller municipalities. Actually, we're in Rancho Cordova now, and after this, we're heading to the San Mateo County area because we're launching there next month. It's very interesting working with the county because you see different cities within the county. I think some are even participating in this webinar, are very different. Some are much larger, some are smaller, but to have this overarching program that they can connect to as they wish, meaning not all cities have to participate if they want to. It gives the opportunity for them to all work together and learn from each other. So we have weekly meetings with the county, and each city kind of talks about what they did, what they've been going through. So that's been very helpful. And I just see a question here about languages. So definitely, the app itself cannot be translated, but material can be translated, and the copy for the advertising and marketing can be. We know, and actually had an interesting thing on Monday in Chula Vista. We went to a business owner who's part of the app, and one of my colleagues, who I think is on the call, is a Spanish speaker, and this business owner was a Spanish-speaking business owner. So she spoke to him in Spanish and said, "Hey, you know that you're on the Choose Chula app?" And the business owner said, "Yeah, I know, but I don't really understand what it is and all that." And then my colleague kind of spoke to him and just gave him the drill down in Spanish. And he's like, "Oh, wow, yeah, this is amazing. How didn't I know?" So sometimes having ambassadors that speak the language and having some sort of element that gives them that sense of familiarity in their native tongue makes such an impact, even if just one conversation. So that's super, super, super critical. And we love to help out with that.
But Diane Rogers, that's an issue in Rancho Cordova. I think you told me they have 90 different languages in the schools there.
Oh, yeah, our school district, there are over 90 languages spoken in our school district. Yeah. So that does make a challenge, but again, when we are offering we're translating some of the materials into the different languages. And I know that we're looking at doing some of the application process in Spanish, but still making sure that the contract itself, because again, with legal documents. The other thing I wanted to offer is from the chamber's perspective, we got lots and lots of calls and emails and things wanting to do something about supporting local business from our residents. And this was the perfect answer because it was simple, it's easy, and we were able to promote the fact that you are doing something local, certainly online and all kinds of chatter about what can we do. Well, this is a very tangible thing that you can do. And it made a difference, I think, in that way of just, versus go support your local business. Well, here's a very tangible way to be able to do that. So.
Yeah, when I was researching this stuff for the webinar, there are hundreds and hundreds of buy local programs across the United States, but I don't know that they have the kind of support and metrics behind it that the Colu program seems to have. And it also struck me that having different communities gives you almost like a learning community. I mean, here in this webinar, we have 3 very different communities. We have, Boston, a big city. We have Youngstown, an older, Mayor Brown said, a legacy city with the challenges there. And then Rancho Cordova, essentially a brand new city and totally different kinds of populations and histories, and yet the program is working in all 3 of them. I think that's pretty compelling argument. So we've got about 7 minutes left. Are there points that any of the speakers would like to make that we haven't made so far? Natalia, how about you?
Yeah, I would encourage any city or town looking to work with Colu and do something similar to what we've done in Boston to really think through kind of capacity. I know one of the things that as a big city with big ambition, and we're trying to make sure that this app is really reflective of our communities, I would really emphasize the focus on what we call our local ambassadors, as well as my team, and making sure that there is someone answering emails, writing copy, doing outreach, and spending actual physical time in the store with businesses. All of these things, I think will definitely contribute to the success of your program, and has been a really important component for us to make sure that the app is being used properly, that people are really benefiting from all the different elements of the app. We've made a really cool video at the very beginning to advertise it. We talked about doing videos about like the how-tos for linking your cards, linking, how to explore, how to use the app. So I think really being thoughtful about all those pieces, and that you in your city have a lot of capacity to implement, I think is really, really critical, because if not, you know, I think people end up confused or, you know, and the last thing you want is any negative experience with the app.
So one of the things that interests me about the program is that it's very customized. So in Boston, it's Be Local. Mayor Brown, you mentioned almost in passing what it's called in Youngstown, but it's U-Town or something like that.
Yo, Y-O.
Yeah.
Yeah, Yo app. Yeah. One of the things I would recommend, and I think Natalia's talked about, you know, really getting engaged, but for me, it was really sitting down with a colleague and micro reference to Akron, Ohio. Akron's about a 45-minute drive for me. And when I realized when they were pitching the app to us, I reached out to Mayor Horgan and talked to him about his thoughts and, you know, give me the pros, give me the cons, you know, if it's something he would do. And it was really comforting for my colleague that he's been doing it for some time to get a sense of he's gotten through some of the growing pains, I would imagine, and he's there for me to help. So that was a big piece. So if you're out there, you're thinking about, you know, something I want to do, look who's in your industry. You know, for me as a mayor, I reached out to another mayor, but if you're, you know, in the chamber, look out to another chamber. Just whatever your industry and that your craft that you're part of, I would make sure that you reach out to that individual, and because we all speak a different language, you know, when it comes to our industry. So for us to really get a good sense of, you know, as mayor, you know, you have to deal with, you know, this if you're going to get the app. As chamber, you're going to have to deal with this. You know, as a bigger city, you're going to have to deal with this. So make sure you reach out to those that are like in your area and your space that can help you have that conversation.
One of the questions that just came in is are any of you using ARPA funds? And I believe the answer is yes. Boston is using them, and I think some of the other places. One of the other issues that struck me when I researched this thing was the impact on equity and Black-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, Hispanic-owned businesses. Michael, could you talk a little bit about the diversity aspect and how that's impacted by the program?
Yeah, absolutely. I can say that, especially now recently in Boston, I know we have some great numbers from a diversity perspective. As Natalia mentioned, you know, a focus on Black-owned, women-owned, and immigrant-owned businesses. We saw that about 77% of total payments for businesses in Boston went to Black, women, and immigrant-owned businesses, even though they were about less than 20% of the businesses in the app. So the point is that the element of awareness is huge, and people want a conduit. They want to have a way to do it. They just don't know how. So that's one of the amazing data points we just got from Boston. So well done, Natalia, to the team and everyone for that.
Well, you made the point earlier, and I think it's a really good one, is that those small businesses like that in historically marginalized populations, they don't have what the big hotels have and the big restaurant chains and the big airlines, where obviously this loyalty points thing works, or Delta and Marriott wouldn't do it. Clearly it works. And here's an opportunity to use that same approach and that same muscle for small businesses. I think we're about out of time. This has been really great, and I appreciate how many participants have hung on right to the very, very end. We're putting up the contact information now for me and for Michael, and we can put you in touch with Mayor Brown or Diane or Natalia, and would be happy to do so. So any questions or comments, please send them to us, and this recording will be made available to all of you as well. So you're taking the time to spend some